Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, no matter where you are on this planet. Today I am in Seattle and it is July 18th and it's a Saturday at 6 p.m. This is always available online at 1150 KKNW and it repeats Thursday morning at 6 a.m. at the same deal or your wonderful podcast. And we're in the month of Cancer. In fact, it's been 5 sessions on Saturdays for Cancer, and we have a second new moon. It happens every 29 months, which interestingly is very similar to the phases for a progressed moon and other ways of systems of counting, because astrology is all about cycles and repeating themes that we can measure in these various synergetic ways. It's like a kaleidoscope. Yes, it truly is. So tonight we are talking about the new moon in Cancer of 28 degrees and 33 minutes, because there were 60 minutes in a degree, just to give that little bit of information. And this is Pacific Daylight Time here. And on the East Coast, well, here it will be on July 20th in 2 days at 10:33 a.m. or it'll be 1:33 p.m. Eastern Time. You know, the first one was 0 degrees on the solstice. That was June 20th. So this is very extraordinary in the sense that the 0 degree was right at the world axis degree. There are 4, the angles, and it's also a northern point, and this is along the horoscope, and details you can always find out more about as you study. So it was at the solstice, so the sun in the northern hemisphere is at its highest point. If you were down below in the southern hemisphere, it would be at the lowest point, because the point being that Cancer is such a widely distributed here among all the other aspects, which my guest and I will cover it some, as we progress in the collective inspired conversation. But from 0 to the last degree, you could say covers the gamut in some ways of experience. And hasn't that been the truth? We've had 3 eclipses, and they span progressively 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after minimum. So it's an 8-week. And then again, it can be flipping back half a year to 3 years. And the time really becomes, as the universe, timeless as far as how one can measure it in different ways. I mean, that's just a broad statement. So I am very pleased that Tara All, a Los Angeles evolutionary archetypal astrologer and tarot consultant.
Evolutionary astrologer.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tara.
No
okay,
worries.
That's beautiful.
I don't want to take credit for something that I can't follow through on. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you're so archetypally concerned. I guess that's it. So maybe.
Yeah.
Okie doke. And she returns as wonderfully. It's been with us for a few years. So if you want to check, you'll find that there are many repeats of other conversations. And Tara lectures nationally, internationally at astrology conferences, webinars, online, and she's published in astrology magazines and currently the resident astrological, or astrologer, I should say, head writer for Sage Goddess. And presently at the publisher is a book, Releasing the Moon, an Astrological Journey of Self-Discovery, that Tara All and Aswin Subramanian have co-authored. So Tara, you can correct me if I said his name incorrectly, or anyway, it's just great to have you looking so forward to.
It's always fun to be with you, Sue, on the show. Yeah, it's Ashwin. It's fine. And Ashwin and I this book was like a year in the process. And so, yes, it's at the publisher and we're excited. And it's about the moon, but also about all the phases, the 8 phases, in particular, the moon in relationship to each of the other planets and the phases they make in your birth chart. So we're excited, but we're standing by waiting for the next step to happen.
It's always true. And isn't that like the moon, really, when we think about it? Because it's systematic. It's every 4 weeks. But and the new moon, of course, is the very seed part of that. And this, I was going to ask you a silly question, but so I won't do that, because I was going to say, now, what phase are we in? And I just answered that. We're in a new moon phase.
Good point. Yeah.
Thank you. A little repeating. But in one
but actually, but right now we're not in new phase. This is a good point. Right now we're still in balsamic, and that's important because this is when you want to release things. You want to let things go.
Yes.
Yeah. Old habits, old patterns. Great time for that.
Absolutely. And especially being in Cancer, it's all about the past and deep past, really.
Yeah.
And opposing the energy is right opposite all that strong planet. I mean, by strong planets, I mean the outer ones of, the social ones, Jupiter and Saturn. I'm saying this, and the transpersonal, which is Pluto, has a long transit and has been in Capricorn, and Saturn has just returned, I think I have a week or so, I'm not sure, and Jupiter for the year. But it's potent, really dynamic energies that the sun and moon are now across, opposing. Yeah.
This tension, I think that's a good word for it. There's tension. I know we were talking privately, before this show, and I was mentioning to you, there's an astrologer named Ange Stoic who I follow, and he was talking about anytime you deal with Cancer, you're dealing with the most personal story, right? The most personal story is going to be featured. So I think one of the questions for all of us right now, we know there's lots of things going on collectively, but with Cancer, they're always, and especially when it's opposing all those planets in Capricorn, to take responsibility for looking at ourselves, right? Because with Cancer, there's something personal, and especially with an opposition, trying to get our awareness. And if we can do that, it truly does change the way we're able to relate with ourselves, each other, the whole planet, the whole deal. So to me, this is very much a new moon. It's interesting because new moons are setting new intentions, but in my mind, it is setting new intentions in some ways to deal with the past in a new way. And when I say the past, I mean like the story and history that we make every day, that we drag in from all the things that we're attached to or that we remember from what's happened before.
Absolutely. I mean, expressed, because Saturn, of course, is time and tradition. And, sometimes we think of just our current life, which for Cancer, it is our childhood, which is very deep in all of us, sometimes hidden. And so it takes that stillness to reconnect. And then the traditions that are passed on from our ancestors, it's also our ancestors. So just expounding on when you say new intentions to deal with the past, it's just so relevant, deeper than at first considered. And doesn't that seem to be really the name of the times, is that concepts, whatever they might be, may have become trite and kind of covered in just a general terms, but we're experiencing them so deeply, like just that past and traditions. It's on a personal basis, that's good, because on a collective basis, we see it. Everybody's responding. So personally, and part of that word also that floods in my mind, water flooding. It's flooded now. Is processing, because personal needs processing.
Yeah. And let's not forget that Cancer is a cardinal sign. which means it's initiating something, but it's a yin sign, meaning it's initiating something on the inside. In evolutionary astrology, we talk about Cancer being the stage of development where you really form your self-identity, meaning you become an old enough child that you recognize yourself with your own separate feelings and your own separate self. And so you sort of form that idea, give yourself edges of who you're going to be as a person. And for most of us, somewhere in that process, it didn't go so well. I'm saying for every single person out there, there are certainly, we tried to fit ourselves in containers that we didn't fit in. We, do things because society or our parents or conditioning says we should do it. And with Cancer, really part of the initiation on the inside is to figure out, in some respects, who you are. And that's an inside job, but it sure affects everything externally. Because if you're not solid in that, and we could think about it this way. I always think about Leo following Cancer, right? Leo, wants to express itself and show that it has value, right? And show its special talents. But you can't do that unless you've done the previous Cancer work of discovering who you are.
And that really speaks of the square, the cardinal square.
Yeah.
Because you've got the Aries on the one side that is separating. And so by the time that's at the ascendant, I'm not sometimes speaking for that broad audience, but by squaring, it forces us to separate those emotions. It's so true. And then on the other hand, the opposite, that it's T-squaring of the Libra, can be, which is on the 7th house, can be projected, like not because it is the other. We can think, oh, it belongs to the other, where actually it belongs to ourself. We're just not looking at it, and so we're like mirroring it to the other person, or they're mirroring it back to us. We just get lost in that business.
Yeah, for sure. Cancer can't. I always say, like, Cancer's not easy work. It's just not. And in the chart, it's linked with naturally with the 4th house, which is the anchor, right? It's your ballast. It's your bedrock. So basically, we can think of just old stories of, like, if you build your house on the sand, it's going to crumble down, right? It's the same sort of thing with Cancer in the development of the psyche.
Yeah, who were the 3 little pigs, or they built different houses.
House of straw, yeah.
We learned early. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Which is perfect, because Cancer, in some respects, it's very attached with security.
Yes.
I mean, emotional security the most, but I mean, Cancer wants to be safe. It's ruled by the moon, right? Which we didn't point this out either, right? We have a new moon in Cancer, which is a sign naturally ruled by the moon.
Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you. Back for basics. That's right. And attachment. When we think too that the moon reflects the light, they're called the luminaries. So the sun is our star that emits all the light generously, and really is the center focal point that in astrology and in life we all relate to, or threads all the astrological, through our will and through our being. But the moon is the other source of light. Of course, Venus is really bright up there too, and I actually saw this last year, a Venus shadow, which I learned is evident. Gemini Brett was saying yes, but Shannon Hayes, who's also on the show, and I think and I were out looking at the water, seeing when Venus was, before she set as an evening star to the morning star. And there across the bay here in Seattle, because you used to live up in Seattle.
Yeah.
There was this huge, it looked like a moonbeam across the water, really broad. But we were perched up on a hill, because there aren't too many dark spots really in Seattle. Yeah. And I thought, well, it's just floodlights. I mean, in my naivety, it's floodlights from the shore. But gradually it started to, as Venus was setting, it retreated across the water. And so it was, that's a moon shadow, or a Venus shadow. But the point that the moon, of course, is our moon that reflects the light.
Yeah. I think it's a good point because the moon doesn't not there no light comes from the moon. It's all the sun's light. So, it's funny that we call, I mean, and I'm sure that it's just become common. We just say the lunar phases, the moon phases, but the moon doesn't have any phases by itself. The phases are the relationship between the sun and moon, right? So
Oh.
it's very important that we remember that the moon's not doing something on its own. It's all relationship. And so, like this whole show today on the new moon, anytime we talk about any of the phases, it's all relationship. It's never one thing. And I think it's also interesting when I think about the idea of the moon reflecting the sun's light. So the sun is so bright, we all know if we look at it, it burns our retinas, right? We can't directly experience it. We can only experience that light directly through the moon. And that tells us something again about what these things represent in ourselves. The moon is very much linked with common everyday people, right? It is the approachable part of us. It's the human part of us. The sun is very much more kind of the spirit part of us. And so I always feel like when you're working with the moon, you're working with maybe the most human aspect that you can of someone. And we all know that that's, like I said, that's not easy. And so you put the moon in its own sign of Cancer and you get a double down dose of humanity. And, that comes with its good and that comes with its challenges.
All personal. That wraps right back to the first
Yeah.
thing you said.
Always personal with the moon. Yeah.
It really is. I happen to favor Cancer people, I think, which is sort of remarkable. But of course, I have the moon in the first house. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm swamped in my family, my marriage, people I care for.
And me
So
too. Here we are.
I was thinking, yes, you're. I didn't want to say that, but yes, you are.
Fine.
And so, and it is remarkable how, because things, on one side, one might say, well, why take it so personal? But on the other hand, it's like how one, well, the word processing can even be overused maybe, but it is how one integrates into their experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's their experience. So you have to relate first to your own experience, and therefore it becomes personal.
Yeah. I love it. Like Stephen Forrest in his books, he'll talk about, because, oftentimes we as astrologers will say, oh, the outer planets are not personal or something is generational, right? And he just basically laughed and he goes, are you joking? He's like, are you telling me that for you, Pluto in your chart is not personal? So that exactly what you were saying is that as long as we're human, it's going to be personal. That doesn't mean that we can't see things broader, but you can't escape the personal. Everything is personal. And that's really what we're here to do, right? We're here to do our own thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's not in service of something greater, but I think sometimes in some ways we almost demonize that idea of personal, right? Or ego, right? Because the moon and sun both can get associated with the ego, but that is part of identifying who we are separately. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah. So. And then again, everything has purpose. So I think if there was an opportunity to provide and share, like the sun does, with its light in that case, because you begin to see the thread maybe between in the second quadrant there where, it's Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Virgo, of course, is a service, and Cancer is the personal story and the nurturing and the attachments and mother, home, all these factors. But Leo in there is the development and the manifestation. So anyway, I was thinking that, and right now it's personal, sun, moon, that emotion and will, or spirit and matter, however we
heart and spirit, even you could say too, because moon is very much linked with the heart. Yeah.
Yes. And it's focused across in a phase, the opposition. I mean, there's like the 180 degrees. That's from the big circle of looking at this Capricorn energy that, of course, the water planet needs a container. But then again, so Saturn's a container, but sometimes the container doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and what I love, going back to before we have about 5 minutes before we have our little
Okay.
break. Who you are, that really is a huge factor too right now, as of a few days. Well, in fact, it could. Well, anyway, Chiron and Mars are both in Aries and conjoined at 9 degrees, I think, just a few days ago, right now.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And so as of the new moon, it'll be 12 and 9. There'll still be an orb.
Yep.
But that's so significant because Aries, or Chiron rather, is in Aries, the big search. Can I be myself, and can it be okay, my own identity?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely is. It can even feel like a self-identity crisis. You all of a sudden realize, especially conjunct Mars, you all of a sudden realize that, you've been playing too small, or you've been wearing the wrong costume, right? Or you've been on the wrong stage, or you've been on the wrong planet, whatever your story is. But we carry a lot of a frustration in that, of literally just not feeling like we're able to be what we are. And those things, these are such core things we're talking about, that it's hard sometimes even to find words, or like even to make sense of it in our heads. And so sometimes it comes out in honestly, sometimes angry behavior, sometimes rebellious behavior, comes out in all different sorts of ways. I don't know if you noticed this, Sue, but the moon, so this new moon is going to be quintile the asteroid Juno.
Oh,
and
good. Yes.
and I always like, I for me, like, I'm kind of a basic astrologer, meaning like I don't use a whole bunch of the fancy aspects, because for me, I just doing more with less gets me further. But the quintile, when it shows up, I pay attention to it because it's such a potential for something innovative, right? For some sort of like a brilliant insight, or a new way of, sometimes we call it like the aspect of genius, although I'm not a big fan of that word, but you know where I'm going with this. But with the moon quintile
70
Juno,
and 72 degrees, I should
yep,
say that.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. The thing with Juno, one thing for me that Juno always represents is commitments and what you're committed to. And the number one thing with Juno is, are you committed to yourself? Now, Juno's also linked with partnership, so that's a different piece. But I'm just taking this very simply because the new moon is opposed all those planets in Capricorn, including Saturn. We have commitment coming at us from more than one angle.
Absolutely. And Juno happens to be in the sign of Libra, which is
Yep.
partnership.
Yep.
And it's actually exactly opposite Mars. So Mars is that separation, and Mars is in its own sign. So Mars is definitely wanting to separate, needing to separate. When I think about the climate, the climate collectively, without expressing things, which I think so many of us are aware um, of protests for equality, of dignity of the individual to be unilaterally recognized and honored as a human, really relates to this entire dynamic. And I love the fact you brought up Juno, because it is an asteroid, and she, in mythology, as we know, she was the wife of Zeus, or Jupiter, the god of all, the collective gods. But it is that alliance. It is like, how are we being true to that duality of self and other? But it's yin. It goes right back, Tara, to everything you've said in
Yeah.
the beginning, that this is processing, it's personal, and it's yin, and it's within. And in some ways, we need to, by looking at the past, what of these stories were parts that really don't align with us? They may have been family stories, they could have been societal stories. It could be that the story wasn't fully told, which we're
Yeah.
finding out in history all the time,
Yeah.
just shockingly. I'm so amazed to discover more detail that of gross conduct, of not just conduct, but of perception,
Yeah.
which is wanting to be broken. It's like breaking the shield in order to repurpose it, to redefine things.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up Chiron. Chiron's always about breaking open to heal, It doesn't have to be a breakdown. It's, but you got to open. But one thing I was going to say, when you were mentioning that these different conditionings or these false stories, you mentioned a lot of outside places. I just want to add that our own personal stories, I mean, the ones like that I make up in my own head, I need to look at those too, because there are things that I tell me every day about you,
Yes.
about life, about me, in our case, about astrology, that are not true. For me, the words that come up with this sort of collection of things that we've all talked about is self-integrity. To me, that's just maybe what I would say is like the banner hanging over this new moon.
Boy, that's beautiful. Integrity is ethics, it's accountability, it's karma. Karma is what happens after dharma. I guess dharma is what we do, and therefore it brings in some kind of a consequence, which is not A to B. It's just a situation that develops. It's sort of like a plant that's been put in the wrong soil or the right soil or in the wrong location.
Well, and Sue, it's also with, cause and effect, it's also a whole bunch of causes. Like, this is why it's so hard to track these things, because it's not one thing, it's 100 things all affecting each other, ending up somewhere. For me, integrity is about alignment. It's aligning, my higher self, my lower self, aligning my mind and my heart and my actions. So it's not a morality thing. It's am I in alignment with all the parts of me? And so to me, ultimately, that looks different for each of us. And that's why I say, it's an inside job of figuring out, are you in alignment with you truly, deeply, honestly?
Boy, that wraps the whole picture together, because then it means that one really has to, I was thinking this, is it okay to be me? And it goes back to taking the inside view and reviewing the past and the whole framework. Like you say, it's so complex. We'll be right back. I am with Tara All from Los Angeles, an evolutionary astrologer, author, lecturer, and we are talking about the second new moon this month, which is 28 degrees and 33 minutes of Cancer. And we'll be right back.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. Currently, we are in the period of Cancer. By leaving a cycle based on connecting mental communication to the external, the energy of Cancer involves emotions, which create our personal story through our emotional associations and attachments. As a cardinal water sign that is nurturing, Cancer needs to process emotions in one's own internal rhythm of cycles in order to complete an evolution.
Hi, this is Petra Touchert of Petra Touchert Astrology, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we discuss the meaningfulness of our roots in the stars.
No other station delivers this much variety. Alternative Talk 1150.
Oh, hi again. This is Sue Rose Minahan and Talk Cosmos. Tonight is July 18, Saturday, and we repeat Thursday. That's the 5 days later, the 23rd of July at 6 in the morning. That's Pacific time. And Tara All is my guest tonight from Los Angeles, and we're talking about this new moon. And just as we were taking our little break, I was thinking of the word nostalgia. I was listening to Linda Bird Kaboto speak at Astro Hub, and she was bringing up, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't think of that word itself, because the nostalgia, what this with this complicated issue that is not, well, I was going to say not staying away, but is remaining in our experience every day of coronavirus, is nostalgia to a point. And is memory. That's another factor of Cancer, is so much memory. That thought, but
I'm also thinking that, but we can't get hung up so much with nostalgia. I mean, sometimes I think memory, if best served, is like going across the sea or any water in a sailboat where you sort of track with the wind and maybe look behind to get some reference, but then you point straight ahead. I'm not a real sailor, but somehow I've got that idea. Does that make sense? I think it's a reference.
I think about, so with here's my deal with memory, and with Cancer in particular, with which I am blessed with a whole lot of it in my chart. So I work with it every day, all day long. Is that the memory memories are honestly just new emotional reactions to original emotional reactions, which were never really factual to begin with. So you have to remember that when you're working with Cancer and you're working with reactions and memories, that so much of it's made up. And I don't mean that in any kind of a negative way. I just mean it is like, it's how we're reacting to things that we're bringing up in our head. Right. And so there's this huge realm of Cancer that is sometimes disconnected from what somebody else is really thinking, what actually happened, what is actually happening, because it's so tied up in the personal context. It's so subjective.
That the verbal part triggers earlier that you had mentioned about the frustration of Aries and in the separation process, and it's a cardinal and wanting to go ahead. And the fact really that this ties in with Cancer, that the first two signs, Aries and Taurus, are nonverbal signs because they come before Gemini. And one of the gifts of Gemini is that it lends stories to our emotional basis in the fourth house. Each sign developing further our pattern of existence and identity. So it is very true that it is the connotation of made up can be questioned, but the fact is, it is our story. And it gets back to that alignment, and it gets back to reflecting, realizing that the reflection that we gather from the moment, just like light coming through a window or the sunsets, can vary, and that can shift how we originally see something, which is a beautiful part of it. And really that makes for correction. I mean, this whole idea, now I'm a little branching out in my thought, which I do, but I'm thinking of the prisons, that this idea of, well, one of the stories we're having right now is down in one of the southern states. I don't know if it's Georgia. You can correct me which state maybe, and so I shouldn't suggest one if I don't know, because I'm sitting up here in the Northwest, up in Washington. But the fact is if it had been voted that a couple of years ago that if people were in jail as a felon and then had completed their term, that they could vote. And now it's being questioned and trying to be revoked by the governor of that state. And it really upsets me. I will say I am upset about this. I get upset about social things. I try to keep it small, but I will at least express the fact that it does really upset me, because in my belief, and this is back to the story of Cancer, the personal part, is that prisons the purpose of it is just like on a societal basis to pause a person however long, and granted, this is the ideal, so there's not one fit all, but the process generally so that they have time. Like the ideal Mandela of South Africa, who sat there for many years, going through so many different personal stories in his head until he was able to emerge whole with himself to the point that he could become a leader, from being imprisoned to this leader of South Africa. I mean, that's what one strives to obtain. But so in other words, by saying that they're made up and are false is so full of error, and then getting to the point where we aren't recognizing that people can reflect and recreate a new story that's in alignment with themselves defeats the entire purpose of imprisonment. Otherwise, it just becomes, I think, someone trying to pretend to be some deity, a force that's trying to have revenge. It's nothing else.
Well, I think about this with Cancer, and it's funny we haven't talked about a lot of the beautiful things about Cancer.
Good.
We've sort of, I mean, but there is a lot of growing up to do. There's a lot of growing up to do with Cancer. Let's just say that. And when it opposes Capricorn planets, there's even more growing up to do. But here's the thing. So Cancer at its sort of lower expression or more shadowy expression, it's very like it's limiting in who it considers to be its quote unquote family, right? Its sense of belonging is limited to who I decide that is, and at the higher expression, to me, the fuller expression, in fact, the esoteric ruler of Cancer is Neptune. So the higher expression would be that we all belong together, right? We are all one. So when we start to look at these things like, and it's not just that in the prisons, it's also just leaving people to die from COVID in the prisons, with it overtaking. And because in some ways that means that someone has sort of made a decision that somehow those people don't count. There was a suggestion somewhere that maybe because I think one of the states that had one of the huge prison problems, there was such a huge rise of COVID, they just wanted to exclude that from the statistics. So their state didn't look so high for COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that reflects to me the side of Cancer that wants to pick and choose who is quote unquote mine, right? Who's part of what I consider to be my people. And
so interesting because see, I was thinking of the Saturnian Capricorn side, but I'm glad you brought up that this is a tribal sort of
but it's always both.
Protection. So let's talk about some of the beautiful things, because I had not realized either that perhaps we were getting.
Yeah. And just real quickly, because you can't do Cancer without Capricorn. Polarities are one field of energy, right, Sue? So
absolutely.
So I was just playing into your field. Yeah. Picking the other side.
In fact, it's like the grand square, right? It's got the all four angles. Yeah. And of course it is an angular sign. Well, looking at the phases of the moon, thinking of what you've been focused on in the new publication, it's will be relatively soon in the future.
Yeah.
The phasal, those phases can be adapted to so many processes of life. Mm-hmm. But like right now we're in this new moon phase of seed growth, and that's another reason to take all this from the past and grow something new. Mm-hmm. With our attachments, with our new attachments of nurturing it and kind of discarding what we're no longer going to be attached to and attaching ourselves to something new.
Well, yeah, because right now we're in the balsamic phase, which is I think about often. It's like compost, right? You need to look at your life like that. What do you want to put in the compost, pail that's going to create the fertilizer? And if you don't want it to be part of the mix, now is the time to let it go. One of the best to me, I mean, there's a number of beautiful things about Cancer, just as there is with every single, sign or every archetype we look at, is its ability to grow and nurture things. That is something at the heart of Cancer. In fact, most Cancers, they don't all have children, not biological children, but you will be very rare to find a strong Cancer that does not want to grow or nurture something. It's good at that. I also feel Cancer, when it's mature in itself, what I mean by that, when it's no longer looking to the external world to feed it and take care of it and meet its needs, which is one of the shadow sides of Cancer for sure. When it is emotionally self-sufficient, it's able to be with people through their most human experiences and in their most fragile experiences. When I'm talking about things like, from little babies to people that are old getting ready to transition, to sick people, to people that are very emotionally, upset, to, all these different phases. Because as I was saying, that connection with humanity, with Cancer, unlike Capricorn is more the energy, the polarity that wants to say, okay, let's fix it. Let's work with it. Let's make something of it. Cancer, in part of its caring nature, is able to just be with you without needing to change something. Yes. And that's such a gift, because most of us are uncomfortable just being with uncomfortable stuff, right? Like our nature is to, let's say a friend calls you up and they're really upset. But oftentimes our nature is we want to make it quote unquote better. And with Cancer, sometimes the best medicine is just to be with that person or be with yourself as you go through what you're going through. Like you said before, it's water. It needs to flow, And so to be present to someone, to be able to stay with them without losing yourself in it, to stay solid in yourself, but to be present, even when it's maybe icky, when it's maybe scary, when it's maybe, there's some really difficult aspects to human life. Vulnerable is the best word I would say here. Cancer, when it is emotionally secure within itself, part of its strength is vulnerability. That just usually doesn't come until later in life, because like I said, Cancer is sometimes slow to get to that solid ground. It's like a crab. It's got like 2 feet in the water trying to get out on the land. It's not always there quite yet.
Well, a beautiful part about Cancer, I think, to realize is that the flowering, the time of processing, and it can be on many different levels, but it's like any flower or something that we look out in nature that has its own timing. When it's ready, it's totally ready, and it can be so functionable, and this idea of being present right with the moment is the whole gift of truly feeling, truly manifesting, instead of projecting to the future or remembering, well, I'm back to the past here, just using that as like a little anchor or something.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like the only thing we have is now.
Yeah. And that brings me to the other water sign, Pisces, which I understand that once one realizes that now is not in its entirety of truth, we can deal with it without without thinking or feeling that it needs to be in its perfected in a perfected reality. In other words, it is as it is. And then, because at that point, then we can to be with someone at their pain, or and looking at the other water sign of Scorpio, that can of such grief, through. And I say that understanding the dynamics of the 8th house between the 7th and the 9th, and the sun as it goes around in its primary motion, before it sets, and all of that, which I'm speaking of in astrological ways, but just to give an idea that there's some rationale behind these thoughts, but that many times it allows other people, I'm realizing, to process their emotion. And it isn't knowing immediately how it is. It is that water trine where it's unknown as the Pisces, and it's so deep, going, down below the level of Earth, that one has to kind of travel to. That Pisces allows a person to flow, like it's all water, but to flow.
Yeah. It's for sure the water flowing underground. Makes you think of Talking Heads, right? That's a song with that lyric in it. But also it's wide, Sue, but Neptune is making a wide trine to that new moon.
Oh, let's see. Oh, indeed. Yes,
Which is everything you just said. So even while we're having some of this, need to grow up, need to step up, need to have the self-integrity to find the alignment. What are you committing to yourself? At the same time, we have, that reminder of, to me, that ultimate, the compassion, And also too, like with Neptune has the ability not just to heal, but to wash away the illusion. So
dissolve.
Yeah. So part of this, I think, as Cancer brings up those memories that feel so true, I mean, my gosh, I know, like right now I could like, Cancers are emotional hoarders. We hold on to emotional memories and emotional things.
True.
Like, yeah, I know.
I have Moon in the first.
So
and a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. So Neptune helps us, because it's not that we want to, everything doesn't need to go, but there are some things that aren't serving. There are some things that aren't helping us be more of what we truly are, more of our authenticity. And so I feel like that part of the help here with this new moon is that's almost like a huge balm, a balm for the soul. I mean, like a healing balm that not just like covers up the wound, but literally can help to wash away. And
like
then and you recognize that what you thought was there wasn't real anyway. And there's a grieving process in that. That's not easy. That takes ownership.
Too. It is like having feelings and letting them go.
Yeah.
There is a bit of a mourning because there's and the fortunate, what's really important is to remember that there is joy, to let one go back to the moment long enough to see fresh at the moment and see the potential joy, or not potential, but what's right there. That is absolutely important. Everything you've said is so much part of this chart, because looking at it, there's a sextile at 60 degrees. It's a connector force between Neptune and all that opposition that's to the sun and moon. And so that Neptune is truly operating to help us do the transformational from it could be overwhelmed too, I mean, shadow, but still the dissolving process, that's eventually, however it operates, that's its goal, is it?
Yeah, I mean, and the beauty in that is that so from the moon's perspective, which again, ruling Cancer, the moon likes to know. The moon likes to be comfortable in what it knows, right? So anytime we talk about, this Neptune energy coming, there's going to be a certain level of threat, a threat that life won't be as you thought it was. But the exciting part here is that it can be, the word better is such a poor one to use here, but I mean more true to you. And then what you said, that word joy, is we experience that joy. Joy comes when we relieve ourselves of conflicts, right? The moon holds on to a lot of things that create conflicts because it wants to stay safe in what it knows. So Neptune is that invitation, especially Neptune in Pisces, like to let go of those conflicts. And with the let going of conflict, you release tension. And that's when you do experience that peace and that joy. So the opportunity's there. I'm just saying, I don't think that this new moon, I mean, feeling into where we are as a humanity, we're not going to wake up on this new moon morning and have this happen. But
it's a process.
but like you said, the seeds of this, that's all of these things we're talking about, those seeds are being planted. And just the intention, if you did nothing but set little intentions around this, if everybody did that,
beautiful,
that makes a huge shift in the collective.
It is. And feel the intention and feel the best at the moment, where one can really open with feeling back again, because again and again, feeling is part and parcel of manifestation. It's so true. And really, when you say about the moon wanting to know, it's the unknown that Neptune presents. But on the other hand, if we think of ourselves as incarnated spirits, that that is our essential gift of connecting with Source, however one defines that energy, that is our navigating center. When they say that I'm the captain of my ship, and then I get that. I used to know that phrase 100%. I'm the captain of my ship and the navigator of my...
I think you must have been a sailor in a past life, because you use a lot of those metaphors.
Well, you know what I have? I have South Node, and my moon conjunct. They're at 20, 22 and 24. Spica. And
Oh,
Spica is the fixed star that the navigators would
yeah,
use.
there you go.
So I probably, and Neptune in the first house too. They're all conjunct. So
Yeah, there we
a
go.
lot of this water business. Oh, I'll take this moment to say that next week, which will be August 1st, we will have Planet Buzz, and that's with Dr. Laura Tad. And the title, I'm just doing this half out of my brain here, so I have to. Oh, yes, it's going to be the USA's Leo North Node identity, because we will be in the Leo archetype. And tonight, I am speaking with Tara All of Los Angeles, an evolutionary astrologer and lecturer and speaker and an author, a wonderful book that's coming out next month. We trust. I mean, it's in process. Back to Cancer. We're talking about Cancer tonight. Yes, and it's the 18th of July. So find out about Tara at Tara All, and that's lots of A's. That's TARAAAL. Otherwise, just check out Talk Cosmos and you'll find how to get in touch with her down in Los Angeles. So here we are finishing up our 28-degree new moon that will be happening on the 20th. And right now we're in that balsamic phase, just finishing up. Oh,
Sue, did you look up the Sabian symbol?
No, I didn't. I have my book here. Do you have yours?
I could go get it, but if you
No, I've got it right.
I think you should read it.
Okay, so I am looking up. Let me look here fast. We're talking about Cancer, right?
Yeah, so we need 29 Cancer.
29. Okay, there it is. Oh, here it is.
And for anybody who doesn't know, it's because we round up when we do Sabian symbol. So
yeah, a muse weighing twins. A muse, one of the muses weighing twins, is a symbol of man's continual, if not always evident, relationship with the over reality in which he lives and moves and has his being or her being. Here, given an emphasis on the side of inner reconciliations. Oh, that's right, what you nailed. Yeah. Individual existence is always manifest as personality in the world of the senses and as reason in a realm of eternalities. Wow. Shall I go on? And the effective union of these complementary functions is found in the immortal insights, of a spiritual wholeness. Oh my goodness. Boy,
this is
you
perfect.
Are right. It is. Thank you, Tara. A person knows oneself now one way and now another.
Oh, yeah.
And
new story.
Yeah, perfect. And therefore realizes their integrity of selfhood. The key word is value.
Integrity of selfhood. This is perfect. I didn't even read this first. I love this.
No, thank you. When positive, the degree is an effectiveness of judgment, irrespective of monetary contradictions on every hand. So it's a degree of effectiveness of judgment. So in other words, it is that alignment and everything. So no matter what else might be telling you otherwise by their stories, you know about it inside. And when negative and undisciplined perfectionism, in other words, trying to maybe correct things by other people's stories, right? Not one's own.
Yep. Oh. No, it all comes back to you. And all that opposition, all that Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto and Capricorn, they're helping us with that.
Absolutely. That is the name of the game. That's something to recall.
Thank you, Sue, for reading that. That was lovely.
Yeah, it was just, they're very insightful. In fact, to let people know, that's SABIAN symbols. And this is by Mark Edmund, that's EDMUND Jones, because there is another current Mark Jones that's in England, a wonderful astrologer. But Mark Edmund Jones was really quite renowned of years before. And there's other Sabian interpretations, but that's the root of what we...
Yeah. And plus, I think we have to wrap up here. So
we do, except that when the music comes on, we have about half a minute. Just to let you know.
There's another Sabian symbol book, by the way, by Dane Rujar, and it also is a wonderful read.
Oh, I need to get that. I forgot. Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, no, I don't have that one. Yes. Very good. Dane Rujar is another just
Yeah, brilliant.
pillar of astrological strength. Well, from your book, what's a takeaway? We have, like I said, a little bit of time here, I think, before the last minute.
The takeaway is that when you work with the moon, you start to work deeply with the moon, you realize all the ways you can integrate your personal kind of self-identity, ego self with all of the other parts of yourself. And when you do that consciously, it's amazing how just your life shifts in so many different ways.
Oh, thank you, Tara. It's just such a blessing. I keep wanting to have you back again and again and again.
Well, I love it. So thank you for having me.
We'll work on it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, and many seeds and good growing times. Lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.